Thank you for joining us. I'm Mackenzie Williams, and I'm the Art and Architecture Librarian here at the Cooper Union. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program as a part of our Spring 2024 series of the Public Art Fund Talks at the Cooper Union. These talks are organized around exhibitions that connect socially relevant and groundbreaking artwork to a wide audience. We are grateful to the Public Art Fund for their ongoing support for this series. They're an organization that, like the Cooper Union, believes in the power of democratizing art and making creative discourse accessible to all. Thanks to their teams for continuing that mission and partnering with us to make the programs such as this possible. We have a fascinating conversation ahead of us. We're excited to have Clifford Prince King and Lyle Ashton Harris here to discuss their practices in photography and collage. You'll hear more about their incredible work in just a moment. Before we get started, I want to quickly mention that the Cooper Black Student Union Group has a group show in the gallery across the hall. Please feel free to stick around after the talk to see their work and meet some of the up-and-coming Cooper artists. Now, it is my pleasure to hand things over to Katarina Stapopoulou, who will be introducing our featured artists this evening. Katarina is an adjunct curator at the Public Art Fund. Her curatorial work has also included solo exhibitions with Marnine Gutes, Jillian Wearing, Vera Alquazi, and Claudia Weiser. She's also the curator of Let Me Know You Get Home, a current public exhibition of the works of Clifford Prince King. Please join me in welcoming Katarina.
Thank you, Mackenzie, for the introduction. Tonight's program is part of a continued series of conversations hosted by the Cooper Union, which aim to connect compelling contemporary artists to a broad public by facilitating a dialogue about artistic practice and public art. Public Art Fund would like to offer gratitude to the Lenape, the original people of the land on which Public Art Fund is now based. We acknowledge the genocide and the forced removal of the Lenape nations from their homeland. We honor the many First Nations people who continue to live and work in this region today. Tonight, we have the pleasure of being in conversation with the incredible Clifford Prince King and Lyle Ashton Harris on the occasion of Clifford's exhibition, Let Me Know When You Get Home. The exhibition is being presented on 300 JC2Co bus shelters in New York, Chicago, and Boston, as well as 30 newsstands in New York City. So I hope you all have the opportunity to see some after this talk. There's one on Bowery and Waverly Place, and there's one, on Broadway and Waverly Place, and there's one on Broadway and East 3rd. So we invite you to go see them after this talk. We would like to extend our most sincere gratitude to our ongoing site partners, JC2Co, who are the reason that exhibitions like King's are able to take place. JC2Co partners with cities across the United States, as well as countries throughout the world, to build the bus stations and newsstand infrastructures for these cities. Through their generosity, we're able to mount dynamic contemporary art in spaces typically reserved for advertisements, allowing us to imagine the entirety of our cities as homes for public art. I would specifically like to thank Alan Sullivan, Gabrielle Brassel, and Jamie Morrissey for their tireless efforts and ongoing commitment to this important program. I would like to take a moment to thank the supporters and partners who make Public Art Fund talks possible: Con Edison, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. We would also like to thank Public Art Fund's board and the entire staff, especially Gabriela Lopez Dina, Associate Curator of Public Practice, as well as the whole team here at Cooper Union, specifically special thanks to Kim Newman, who spearheads the programming for Cooper. The exhibition's presenting sponsors are Bloomberg Philanthropies, and leadership support is provided by Jennifer Harris, Elizabeth Pepperman, and Richard Pepperman, and additional support is provided by Anne and Mel Schaffer. And now to briefly introduce the speakers for tonight. Lyle Ashton Harris has cultivated a diverse artistic practice ranging from photography to collage to video and installation art. His work examines the impact of race, gender, and desire on the contemporary social and cultural dynamic globally through intersections of the personal and the political. Harris has been widely exhibited globally, and his work is represented in major collections throughout the world, ranging from the Guggenheim, the Met, MoMA, the Whitney, and Tate Modern, among many others. Over the past 3 decades, Harris has been on the faculty of NYU, where he's a professor of art and art education. Clifford Prince King is a self-taught artist working in photography and film who documents his personal relationships in traditional, everyday settings that speak on his experience as a queer Black man. King takes photos of friends, lovers, and acquaintances, many of whom have significant connections to the site where they are photographed. He's had recent shows in New York City, in Syracuse at Lightworks, Stars Gallery in Los Angeles, and is in major collections such as the Hammer Museum, LACMA, ICA Miami, Minneapolis Institute of Art, and the Studio Museum in Harlem. Please join me on welcoming to the stage. The conversation will last approximately 40 minutes, after which we invite you to have a Q&A with the artists. Thank you very much.
What a great audience. Well, welcome everyone. Before we start, I just wanted to, can I be heard? Can you hear?
Testing.
Great. Before we start, I just wanted to take a moment of silence just to dedicate our conversation to the memory of Brent Sycamore, and just to acknowledge, his vision and the gifts he gave to so many of us. It's an honor to see you. I just want to just say, first of all, thank Catherine for inviting me to. I remember when she reached out, and as you know, I've had a crazy schedule, and it was my dear friend James and Katie, so maybe I should do this. And I've been thinking of your work for a number of years, and I've been really inspired, so I'm honored to be here. And
Thanks for being here.
And I just want to just sort of say, so we can just get it off the table, so we can make this an opportunity for us to enjoy each other here and sort of like let go of, the audience.
Okay.
So I was recently in conversation with Ryan McGinley at the Norton, and it was a great conversation, but we made it interesting just sort of like to be present.
Right.
And
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we're just getting to know each other, and I was
Right.
just saying, we're just getting to know each other.
We met for the first time last week. I think I came across your work like 3 years ago, and my first thought was, how have I never seen this before? And then I kind of dove into it, because I feel like a lot of the times, like, friends or people who know my work kind of slowly introduce me to work that I should see, and I kind of like that approach versus doing like research and kind of forcing that upon myself, like for things to kind of appear, and you appeared, and I was just obsessed ever since. So thank you.
Thank you. It was similar to you. I mean, I think I might have seen you. I saw your work. I mean, clearly on IG and other places, and there was something about it, that really, piqued, my interest, and it made me curious, and I don't know, there was something that felt unfettered, in terms of its ability to, language the erotic and intimacy, and at the same time to deal with a certain political energy, but that was very sexy to me. So I was curious, and I think I reached out, and then through a friend, and so I think we were going to meet in New York. So I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to connect recently, and I'm looking forward to this being the beginning of of a a dialogue. And yes, I think it might be helpful. I mean, we have several things to cover. I mean, we don't have to cover anything. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So we want to, obviously congratulate Public Art Fund.
Yes,
Of course, I think
thank you all for being here as well.
And, yeah, the audience, obviously.
Yeah.
And one thing that came up for me when we met over. We had lunch, but before that we met with Catherine. We have coffee. What did we meet? Zoom. Yeah,
Yes,
we had a Zoom
Zoom.
call. Zoom call. So one of the things that came up for me when they mentioned there were 300, just to get the stats out, there are 13 images, new works,
Yes.
that are produced over the course of this past year.
Right.
From
Mostly in the
local-
summer.
The summer,
the 3 summer
locales from our beloved Bafo
Right.
residency in Fire Island being one of them.
Yes.
Where else?
And then there was the 8th House residency in Vermont.
Okay.
And then I went to Brazil for 2 weeks. That wasn't a residency. It was a self-residency. And then I went to light work in Syracuse. And then I went to the Cayman Islands.
And how was the Cayman Islands? I haven't been.
It was nice. It was warm, and it was nice to hang out with a bunch of influencers for a week.
Okay. Well, what does that mean?
It was, I kind of dissociated a little bit, which I thought was nice, but it was very clothes and, reels and stuff like that. So it was kind of nice to watch all that.
Great. So there are those 13 new works, and then they are between the cities of New York, Chicago,
And Boston.
So one question that came up to me that I did ask that over Zoom a week ago, what were the locations? I did ask specifically, like in New York, because I'm thinking of the policies of location. I am just, you can look up on Wikipedia, I'm 59. So I grew up in the Bronx, the Northeast Bronx to be exact. And I negotiated the city in different ways. Right. So what came to mind in terms of thinking of the levels of intimacy between two men, two Black men, two queer men in a public sphere, and what it meant to somehow grow up, as a Black queer in the Bronx, and to even today, 59 being famous, whatever, that I still register, let's say, maybe trauma is one way of looking at it, but to register in terms of the hypervigilance, in terms of negotiating location, space, et cetera.
Right.
So I am interested in terms of that's one question I had, how these images are functioning and the power to somehow take this level of agency, or Black love, intimacy, queer into a public space. And I think I'm really intrigued by that, the radicalness of that. And yes, that's what I wanted to sort of say.
Right. Well, a lot of this work it's outdoors, but still private amongst the outdoors. But then to kind of see them on display in the street, I think it's almost like it was a behind the scenes that is now being displayed, the opposite kind of environment. So it's really interesting to kind of see how that is different.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very beautiful just to see in terms of how people from different walks of life engage, and I think that's sort of its power.
Most of the work that I've done is a lot more interior based, and for you as well. I feel like a lot of your work is this is outside.
Somewhat interior.
But even photographing people outside, there is. I don't necessarily have someone keeping watch, but there is a level of alertness when it comes to surroundings in order to keep the people you're shooting feeling comfortable. Yeah. Or you don't want people saying things, passing by, or you just want to provide a safe environment for creativity to flourish. So.
No, without question. And I guess, I appreciate that in terms of what does it mean to create a safe space when you're shooting. I guess I was also thinking in terms of when you as a producer is not there and how these images will have an impact. And that's part of the beauty is the fact that these images will be 300 of them, across 3 different states and throughout those states, and what does it mean to have this imagery? I think it's a very, very powerful thing. I'm thinking of the image that from Grand Fury, from Kissing Doesn't Kill, in terms of like at that moment when that image came out. I think it's at 85. Can someone correct me? When did the Kissing Doesn't Kill image come out? I think it's 85, and what that meant at that time as a way to somehow critique stereotypes around HIV and AIDS in terms of its transmission, in terms of the power of, let's say, public art, the power of using a public sphere to somehow speak around intimacy in the way
even
that...
thinking about media, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, like not in an art household or anything. So I think most of my knowledge was like Disney Channel, it's like all these like just TV pretty much. So I didn't really have any sort of visual narrative of what my life could look like living in my authentic truth.
So take us back. In terms of take us back to those early days in Tucson, in terms of like parents and how. When did you first?
I was kind of like I minimized myself a lot. I kind of just stayed out of the way and kind of just. I was a good kid, so I just kind of did, normal things, and I was on Tumblr a lot, kind of just like building like a creative archive of things that, I would find interesting. I watched a lot of movies during the summer. And so my first love is cinematography. So that's how I picked up a camera was by way of moving image. And so, yeah.
And when did you get your first camera?
The darkroom closed down my sophomore year of high school. I wasn't in the class. It was really competitive to get into photography, and I didn't get in. But someone that was in the program gave me one of the old cameras that they were throwing them all away. So she gave me one, and I just started taking photos with it. It was some kind of Canon. Yeah.
And so so basically you wound up taking a class eventually, or did you,
I took a class in Portland for like 6 months, but then I stopped going because I had my schedule was really full. Yeah. And so no one would hire me to like work.
So let's slow down a little bit. So you're saying that you did not get into photo class, but you got access to a camera, and you started taking. What it was a Canon. You said it was film camera.
It was a film camera, Canon.
Okay.
It was mostly just my friends or myself if I went out of town, and just street photography. Like I think there's an early photo of a washing machine on top of a car.
Okay.
Just like random things like that.
And then where did you get the film processed?
Some like Walgreens was the first place. Okay. And then I graduated from Walgreens to some small camera shop in Portland when I lived there. Citizens Photo, I think.
And who were the subjects at the time?
In Portland?
Yeah, or even before in Tucson, or in Portland as well.
Well, Tucson was like landscape, cactus, family. I think toward the end of my time in Portland, I started to develop kind of what I wanted to photograph like more clearly. I wanted to make friends that were Black and queer and like a community. So I kind of used my camera as a way to get to know people. And this was like at a time when Instagram was kind of coming up more, I guess. Like people were wanting to book shoots and have like content, but like this was like 2015. So I would offer like to people that I would take photos of them if they had some sort of event coming up and stuff. But then I would also take my own photos. So it was kind of like a trade situation.
And where were you meeting people, in clubs or?
Sometimes there was a small ballroom scene in Portland. I think it was kind of short-lived, but I don't want to say that and then someone's not happy with that. But it was very, I think in like ballroom, like in small cities can kind of like be really strong and then kind of fall apart because there's a lot of competitiveness. So I don't know if that's still happening in Portland, but mostly when I went out and just on the street or on dating apps. Yeah.
Great.
How did you meet people you photographed back then? Or
How far back?
I mean,
Well, I guess it probably goes back. My grandfather was a photographer, and he shot over maybe thousands of slides documenting his friends and family and the church. And also my cousin Ricky, he was the first of my generation to, and he died tragically in a car accident. I believe in probably 73, before my mother and my brother moved to Tanzania, and that was the first time I saw my mother cry. But he photographed the whole family in black and white. In fact, the invitation card for my first show in New York was by my cousin Ricky Johnson. But there was always a camera presence. Also, my stepfather, the man who raised me, is South African, and he had left South Africa after the burning of the passes in '59.
did he teach you how to use the camera?
Yeah, I mean, he did teach me both. I guess it was taught by example. It was like there was always a presence of a camera, around, taking pictures of each other.
It kind of just comes
naturally,
right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And also just seeing how my grandfather would, I guess, choreograph stuff. It was a running joke among his three daughters, all of who were living today, that he took a lot of time to compose a photograph.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It was always something about the
Right. It's a personality trait.
Yeah.
Like my dad had a VHS camcorder, and he would narrate like home improvement projects. So I would look back on the film, and it's him kind of talking about what he's gonna do to our kitchen,
I
to
love
himself, and it's really. But then I started doing that with my room, because I would reorganize my room with I would paint it and just do all this like these things that I thought were really interesting at the time, and I would film it, and then I would also record music videos over the tape, so there was like little pauses in between my interior design quests.
I love that. Do you have that? You have it?
I think
your
it's
archive?
somewhere in my. Well, I don't know. I should find out. But I think things like that just kept me busy, or just it's like making a playlist. Like you're learning about your tastes, but then you're kind of talking to yourself in a way. I don't know. There's something really special about like that time with yourself. I don't know.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the subjects in the photographs. I think it would be how did you meet them? I mean, lovers, friends. I mean, what's your process in terms of, I could tell you about mine as well, but I'm curious to hear. I'm sure the audience would love to hear about how you.
I don't think there are any lovers in these. I think they're all friends, which is, it's, friends are better.
Are they? Why so? Yeah.
This is Malik.
Okay. Hi, Malik.
I've met some. I think going to smaller towns, I really want to connect with local people in a way that isn't taking from the city. And so I think, oftentimes I'll photograph in my quarters of where I'm staying. I'm not really going out and taking photos of people in their neighborhoods, or I'm not opposed to it, but I feel like I'm just careful about that.
So Malik, how did you? Just walk us through.
We met on an app.
Okay.
I think it was Grindr, and I was like, "Hey, would you like to have coffee?" So we had coffee, and then I think we had a meal a few days later, And I was just kind of going over this idea of taking his photo because at the place that I was staying in Lightwork, there's this huge auditorium that's lit by this fantastic orange light because it used to be an elementary school. And so it's like an empty cafeteria essentially. And so we ended up just like getting to know each other, and then he came over. I think I remember trying to figure out what time of day the light was best. So I think I told him to come over at like 6:30. Like there's a certain window when the light hits, so it had to be like a specific time. And then we took those photos, and that's kind of how I try
A meal afterwards? I mean, I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to understand.
a meal after, okay. Or a goodbye, okay. Or see you later. I think lately after taking pictures, I feel really tired. I think because there's so much that I do beforehand, like, and during. I feel like I'm kind of running around a little bit. So I'll like have tea or something. Then an hour later, I'm like done. So then
I find it hard.
So I usually.
I mean, if I look at your work, it feels like it's such an architecture of intimacy. You know that.
Yeah. Well, some are different. Some, I think, when it comes to like elements of time and daylight, it can be a little stressful. But if things are kind of happening, then I just like surrender like the technical aspects. Whether like the light is gone or if it's gonna be blurry, like I don't. But there's certain images that I'm very like I want to get it at this, or if not, then that's fine too. But at least I tried. Yeah. Or like if it didn't work out, it was for a reason, and then the end result is like what was meant to. Like I've shot some people and there was no film in the camera.
Yeah, I've done that.
But then like 2 months later, I'm like, thank God, because that person ended up being like not someone that I wanted to photograph, and I'm just like, look at that, like that's, you know what I mean? Like I kind of trust for things to happen. I love this photo, by the way.
That was at my first gay pride. In San Francisco. I was with John Grayson, who's a professor of mine at CalArts and a dear friend. And
you went to CalArts?
I went to CalArts, and he taught a course on queer representation. And in that class, I learned about queer theory and ideas. And that was my first gay pride in San Francisco.
Yes.
With the parade being led by Dykes with Bikes. Catherine, what is it? And I'm just thinking about it because I'm thinking about that because a lot of the people subject my photographs are my dear friends. I mean, some are lovers. I mean, but a lot of are close friends. And I'm just thinking about.
Do you still talk to them?
In most cases. I mean, for better, for worse, I would say that I've had a long-standing connection with, former lovers or partners or dear friends, obviously in spirit with, Marlon Riggs, Marlon or Essex. These are people who were my guiding light, and I would not be where I am today, but even thinking about like some of the early black and whites that I pulled out, in fact, beautiful. Very much inspired by your generation because it was a few interns at the studio that were taking another dive into the archive and looking at these early nudes, and I feel like in a way, and that's why I'm really inspired by your work is that in terms of my own trajectory, I understand the importance for going through at that time where I was, in terms of going through a certain type of academic training, it was absolute necessity to open up the canon and to create space in the lineage of, let's say, Marlon Essex. But I think in a way now to really allow for those other moments to emerge, if that makes any sense, so...
like things that you're kind of going back and looking at now.
Yeah, just sort of seeing,
they've marinated.
Well, marinated or seeing, former partners or former, lovers or people who have been deeply influential for my life. For example, Prince Marfo, who, basically introduced me to, Ghanaian culture. I would not, for the last, so I think for me, photography has been a way to capture, those intimate spaces and to, but what I appreciate about the work is your work is that it relates to me revisiting certain early moments, but also the moment of today, if that makes any sense, that
Right.
I find that I'm actually, in my, late 50s, actually recapturing the erotic charge in terms of the type of work I'm thinking about, or even in my practice, if that makes any sense, really. So I am, I'm curious just in terms of like the idea of photographing someone and, having tea afterwards or not. Yeah, I mean, for me, because it was about that. It was about that intimacy and that exchange, if that makes any sense. It wasn't just for me about the photograph. It was about the connection,
Right.
the intimacy, or the photograph of me reclining in the bed with Marty, for example. We met at Spew 2, the zine, Drew Sawyer's very important show that's currently at the Brooklyn Museum, that photograph comes out. I mean, there was Spew 2, but it was also after Spew 2 in terms of Marty and I connecting. So, and having this lasting exchange. So I am interested.
I think it's important not to have something feel like a transaction.
Yes. Yeah.
There's something that's built, it's trust, it's understanding and communication.
Well, I get that. I mean, that's why I feel I'm inspired by the work, because I feel like there's something in the work for me that feels intimate, and that it doesn't feel like it's on an auction block, that I almost I'm allowed to come into the space and, answering the call of, the great Marlon Riggs in terms of Black men loving Black men as a revolutionary act. I feel in a way that there's something about the energy of the work which feels that you are involved in creating skin or language, around that erotic possibility. Right. That's also a political possibility, and also just to question, similarly, the way in which Marlon Riggs at that landmark, conference, the Black Popular Culture Conference, had come out, now it may see quaint, wearing the show, Release the Queen, what it meant at that time to claim space in such an august environment. And similarly, the way in which to have the photograph of the cover of your Orange Grove of the portrait of, two men, I guess engaged in level of frontage, with, Martin Luther King. There's something about to add a certain type of tension to, does that make any sense? I mean, for me, there's something that I can somehow like live with that. I can sort of like engage with that, because it's sort of like, without having to hit one over the head with a hammer, the fact that you were saying that I can draw from a multiplicity of identities and histories and erotic histories, political histories, et cetera. And for me, that feels fresh and teethy, and also, so.
I feel like things just take new, like, different forms. Like there's always the need to be an advocate for something, but the way that happens just changes forms, and is regenerated throughout different times.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking, like a lot of the work, like even this shot is what I was thinking about when I was thinking about what I'm about to say. I think I really try to surround myself with people who inspire me. So then it's not all me, the image before. It's like those people that are around me that's the work as well, or like their existence enlightens me, so that it kind of is like this collaboration between people, and just creating that space that you find to be beautiful, and then waiting for moments to happen within that space. So it's already existing. You just have to be present and pay attention to watch it unfold, you know.
So you would, so, and I totally understand it, but I guess I want to, yeah, and I appreciate that. I also want to, and I think maybe this is a question for Public Art Fund in terms of, and as I mentioned to you in the green room, I think it would be interesting, because I think that the Afterlife Project is how these billboards are functioning within the community. And what is the reaction to the billboards? I mean, how do you document? Because I think there's the work, but there's also the work, how that work engages with the public. You know, because I think there's something that we still live in a culture which is, you know, deeply, you know, homophobic, you know, and racist, and you know, as I'm just classes, I'm just wondering how to give a space in which to document how the impact of these images. You know, if you think about the, you know, the young trans, you know, girl who was killed, you know, 2 weeks ago. So in terms of like, I mean, when I heard that, I mean, I think you had posted, I think James had I am not on IG now, but James had told me about that, you had posted that, and just thinking about that young trans person being vilified by classmates, you know. I mean, I'm thinking of, at 59, that could so traumatize me in terms of what it meant to negotiate, let's say being, let's say, in a junior high school when I was called, you know, faggot, sissy, bitch, what? I mean, this was like, you know, many times a day, and I've never been beat up, but in what it meant to negotiate those spaces. So I'm thinking about with these, part of it somehow power is taking these very intimate photographs into the public space, and how do you document that, and that's part of the job of the Public Art Fund. How do you document that and to record the engagement, let's say, with the public, if that makes any sense? So I'm not saying that's your job, but I think that's part of your archive. Yeah.
Well, I think, because me and Katerina were talking about this yesterday, and I just think it's, you know, there's some people who will say like these issues are no longer issues, you know, it's 2024, like no one's racist anymore, or like, but then when there are, you know, projects like this, or like a lot of things still continue to happen, but there's not coverage on it, or, you know, it just feels like it's sidelined almost. But no, I feel like it's a continuous fight for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think we live in a global sphere. I mean, we're in New York, and I was, you know, drove in from upstate and just thinking about, oh, this is great to come get a haircut, come over and hang out and see the greatness of New York, and just thinking about this presentation, this engagement. But I'm also, you know, aware that, I mean, you were just in Brazil, you know, in terms of, so the different spaces, or I lived in Africa, you know, most recently I co-edited an issue of Accra, as you know, and there's an article that we have why we were out, Gays and Lesbians on Fire. You know, this is actually a cover of the Daily Graphic, let's say going back to 2016. And I was in the back of, I was in the front of the car, actually, my driver, and I got a hold of that, like, cover, that issue. And so I'm just thinking about what's happening right now on the continent of Africa, for example, let's say in Uganda, or even in Ghana right now. It's the American conservatism, the investment of the religious right, you know, now they're here, but they had been doing work all along in terms of somehow post-colonial, neo-colonial, let's say, regimes in terms of, let's say, funneling money into various African countries, you know, to create spaces which are not safe. I mean, in fact, in this conversation I had recently, on the occasion of at the IFA, and one woman, she was a journalist from Ghana, and she was saying there was a time where Ghanaian women can just hold hands. There was never ever an assumption, but now even that is suspect. So I think these billboards are deeply powerful, but it's also, I'm curious how they resonate in the global context. And I think that's why I think in sort of how do we think about both locally, but also globally, because you are a global citizen, and I think there's something in the work that feels, and that's why I love, for me, they invite a certain level of intimacy. They're inviting, and I think they call into question. I think they're deeply intimate, even in the public sphere.
Right.
So.
No, and I think even the photos that aren't necessarily like to the point, like regarding intimacy with two, men, or like there is a underlining feeling of that, which I think is like like you don't have to say much in order for us to have that be about like what the work is about. I think just there's layers to it.
No, I agree.
It's like it can be universal, but also if you know, then you know. It's like,
and also you acknowledge that things shift. I went up to the Church of Origin this Sunday with my mother there, where my grandparents met in 27. They got married in 32. Their wedding portrait was taken by Vandersea. And I've been the favorite of, like, say, 6 ministers, since that, In the
Bronx?
In the Bronx, Harlem, Bethel AME. And they had me stand up and say hi this time. So it's sort of like I'm interested that different spaces, how different level, because I think there has been a radical shift. I think it's important to acknowledge that. There has been a shift, as you're saying, much more open and expansive. And I think the images, speak to that. Is this one of the images right here?
Yes.
So tell us about this.
This is, both of these are 8th House in Vermont. I was kind of just there resting for 2 weeks and just kind of, let my body catch up with my emotions.
What does resting look like to you?
I watch a lot of bad TV.
Okay.
I watched a lot of like Love After Lockup. Or like just doing nothing, or being outside, off my phone, just like kind of dissociating a little bit if I can, How about you? Upstate?
Yeah, I look forward to you coming up. Resting, it means to me eating well. I like eating and feeding people. I look forward to you cooking for you. Going for a walk every day, a little yoga, and music.
What do you listen to?
Embarrassed to say, it ranges. I'm a little. I like this old album by Roberta Flack, First Take. I listen to a lot of Coltrane or Love Mantras. It's just like, it depends. Hendrix, it depends really what I'm in the mood for. Classical a little bit. And yes, I want to also talk about, how are we doing for time? 2 minutes. Okay, great. Yeah, I wanted to just talk about, anything you want to ask? Could be advice like
I want to ask you a question.
And I want to ask you another question too. Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite photograph you've taken or series that you've worked on? Because your body of work is pretty expansive, and I'm just curious. I guess that's a bad question.
That's a good question. I would say that there's one. Beautiful. There is, and in a way that it sort of reminds of your work, there's a photograph of a romantic obsessive of mine, a childhood friend of mine. He was a bad boy. I was, the good Christian, whatever, and he was, anyway, and I want to his name was Gasper, and, and so,
It's sexy.
Yeah, in 85, his image has appeared and reappeared, over the years throughout my work. And most recently, there's a show that's coming to Queens Museum, a survey show that started at the Rose and went to the National. Now it's coming to Queens, it's coming home. So I'm looking forward to everyone joining us in May for the opening. Anyway, so he appears in several of these shadow works, and it's interesting how, and that's like there's something in your work that there was an impression that this person left on me, and it was a photograph. He's photographed a Newport cigarette. He's smoking. He has on ankle weights, and I have like a faux studio staging. So clearly, I was thinking about constructing all of it's clay in my bedroom. My childhood bedroom there, but there's this book, I forgot what it's called, but it's a book an athletic book that was acceptable workout book where, straight and gay men can both work out too, you know what I'm saying? But clearly it was a J.O. book, at least it was for me, right. And many people I knew. Right. Anyway, published by Random House, right? So that's the staging of this photograph, right? And I'm wondering, out of the thousands or whatever, how many photographs I've taken, why that one? And maybe because there was the erotic possibility, and it was never "quote unquote" consummated in the way where we might, in the most literal sense. Right. But it was an exchange. Right. It was an engagement. Right. That we and. Only very recently, as the book is going to print, I didn't know if he was still living or not. And I just said, well, Google searches. And I finally had an assistant of mine, Benji's, an audience. Find him down. And he has a CEO, he has 2 kids, and in Westchester. And it was such a relief because part of the imagination, the fact I'm still stuck on a certain image of someone back from 85, 86.
Wait, how old were you both?
Well, I was Truman High School in the Bronx. So I was a sophomore or a junior in high school. Okay. I wore back brace, so he was sort of like, he protected me. And I had not a string, but men who were of his ilk, if you will, who were drawn to me. Okay. And we might have never consummated in that type of sense, but there was a shared intimacy of knowingness, there was a if comfort. That makes any sense. Yeah. I mean, it's different from, let's say, Marty, for example, that was just on. So that's an image that has constantly come. I finally think worked through it. Right. But it took 30 years to finally release it into these montages, the shadow, in a way, and to finally find out that he's living, in Westchester with his wife and his 2 daughters, and we spoke on the phone about a month ago. That's beautiful. And so, so I don't know. I probably that, and then maybe this image right here, the watering hole. Just thinking about, just in terms of being. I don't know. I guess one of the things I want to just talk about maybe is that I feel like it's not so much envious. I just sort of feel like what I guess I really love about the work is that there is a certain freedom that I feel, and it's generative for me today because as someone, when I was going to grad school or undergraduate, what it meant to somehow to etch out and to carve and to open up a space that we're going to be dealing with these issues here, if that makes any sense, in those spaces. And it, for me, necessitated a certain, criticality at that moment. And I feel like what I am inspired by by your work, and I love the synergy and I love the connection, is that it's offering new possibilities. And I feel like, and that feels fresh, for me. It feels like, this is something that inspires me, but also sort of like it mirrors where I'm at in terms of my own sensibility, if that makes any sense.
Well, all of this is, through people within photography before me. It's kind of like I'm doing that because of y'all, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So should we open it up?
Open it up.
Thank you. I think that was a wonderful moment to pause and get some questions from the audience, please.
I could ask a couple of questions. Okay.
Hi. Thank you to you both. My question's actually for you, Lyle. I saw the photo that was up just recently, actually, too, with Christina Sharp in it as well. And I just love hearing about like histories behind works too. And I was honored to actually meet her in person last week as
beautiful.
well. One of my favorite authors. I'm gonna do free publicity for her too in the wake. Required reading for everyone.
Absolutely.
But
And her most recent book?
Yes. I just want to know how that photo came about, how you encountered, if you've like known each other for a while.
Have you read about her? She wrote about the photograph in her most recent book.
I had no
which you
idea.
should definitely definitely read. Well, it was in the vineyard. I mean, and that's why I guess I'm really fascinated by Clifford in terms of this generation, how they are accessing what's the Tumblr or the Instagram, because the photograph of Christina, that was at the vineyard in Gateshead specifically, Aquina, and we traveled in similar circles, and it's the idea of, speaking of Brazil, the idea of a minha cara, as my brother's film, that's my face. So I may not have had dinner with her, but there was the idea of knowingness, that we were queer, we were Black, we were occupying a space of Martha's Vineyard. She's there with her lover at the time, and I shot her in Ektachrome. In fact, she famously says that she did not see the photograph until, I'm notorious for not, for keeping it tight lid of the archive. But I mean, the thing is, I shot her, and then it was the idea of, what is it meant to see these two women, queer Black women in the vineyard, and just think about my own experience, growing up there, partly there, for a week or two during the summer, and what that actually meant. So, does that answer your question? So, so I'm grateful. I'm really grateful that the photograph exists and it captures that particular moment. It's a certain history of Black queer intelligentsia, lesbian erotica on the vineyard in '87. You know what I'm saying? This is, I think it's important to language what the photograph is actually doing in relationship to location, space, and time, if that makes any sense. So.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you both for being here. This has been an incredible conversation. My question's for both of you. Can you speak more about the sacrifice, if there is one, in bringing your camera into intimacies, be they friendships or more, or friendships or romantic relationships?
This for you. Good question.
I mean, I don't know if I would say sacrifice. I think it's more of, it's just kind of, you're inviting, well, it depends on the stage. Before it was fine, but now I feel like it's a little more difficult to date and then have my camera with me. I feel like, okay, I guess as an example, I could talk to like my roommate in LA. Like, I would photograph his relationships for a long time, but then I shouldn't deflect onto him, but I just think now it's so different when you take out a camera because there is social media and everyone wants to be like a content creator, or like it's just hard to be open to the idea of imaging someone and then that being where it ends. I think everyone thinks and understands that images can travel and mean something else later, which is why I think communicating is so important, especially like your intentions with your camera now. Yeah, I just try to be more mindful of that, I guess. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's like tricky. Sorry. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Maybe use the term sacrifice, as you said.
If there is one.
I don't know. I maybe sacrifice is not. I mean, I guess it's a sacrifice. I mean, I think in a way for me, the camera, I guess in a manner, let's say, like Nan Gold, in terms of it creates it opens up, creates safe spaces and possibility that become a collaborative aspect, let's say, to it, to intimacy. Not always, I'm saying, but I think the camera, for me, has I think it saved my life. Yes, I think it without question. The capacity to be discerning and to create boundaries, to be able to, through the lens, to integrate things that, I mean, also the idea of being photographed, being enfleshed, through being photographed in a family that recognized me, if that makes any sense, So I think in a way that I'm interested in that, and then also helping to create some communities and archives and those histories, and to have that be a lasting legacy,
Right.
And I think in a way that what Clifford is doing, as well, in terms of thinking about, like say we know what Bell Hooks looks like, or Marlon Riggs, but in terms of seeing the spheres of intimacy that existed on the margins in those communities, it's what's essential. I think it's what is nourishing. That's the image that is the lasting, if that makes any sense. So I think in that sense, but there is a sacrifice, and I think, it's a double-edged sword, because that sacrifice in a way cuts out, for me, those who for me, it creates a certain safety boundary. So it's like, for me, it's a safety boundary, but also, that said, it opens up possibilities, if that makes any sense.
Okay, my question was actually similar.
I like your hat.
Thank you.
Chic.
So I'd like you all both to address it, but first Clifford and then you. Was there any level of fear in releasing very intimate photos that you were a part of to the public, to put that into the public sphere? So you were much younger, so I'd like to hear what you'd say, and then I'd like to hear what you say, because times are very different.
I kind of let go of that fear a while ago. I don't know. I think it's kind of like one of those things where maybe early Instagram helped me get over that. It's like you post something and you throw your phone in the closet for 2 hours, and then you kind of just walk away, and then you're like, well, you can't, So I think with Orange Grove, my book, and slowly it kind of just became it's all kind of out there already. So it was because these photos are pretty. I think they're beautiful, but they're public friendly.
These over here, yeah. They're beautiful. But I would say, if you don't have this, get this book. It's a beautiful book, and also, thank you for the question. But there is, because it's not really, for me, it's not really about whether releasing to the public. Right. It's what I get from is more about releasing to yourself and to the community, right, and telegraphing that this is a safe space. Right. And the fact that opening up, whether that's transitioning or converting, right. Something radical, seeing you with the pill in your mouth is sort of that any type of residual shame, right, from society 30 years after the epidemic that's not my issue, that we are opening up other spaces. So I don't think it's about the public, it's about you creating safer, open spaces that about us, and as opposed to somehow, well, we have to somehow, well, is this public or not? I think we're beyond that in actuality.
Yeah.
I think it's about creating other forms of knowledge and intimacy and the erotic, about moving beyond shame, about, so for me, it's about possibility.
And I just kind of I disconnect from all of that, and I think, because I think once I process what the work means to me and like how I'm like healing through it, then it's done, and then you can view it or scroll or whatever. Like it's on the internet. Like people move on quickly anyway. It's like you can post a picture and then, like what Drake did. Like no one's talking about that anymore, but like, we're moving on, like no one cares,
I think we have time for one more question.
Yes. Hi, thank you again for this great conversation. So my question is, both of you have engaged in a practice of self-portraiture, and I'm curious about how you feel performance plays a role in that process, and as well as what is the importance of being in front of the camera and including yourself in this narrative, and how may it differ from portraits of yourself versus portraits of your community and friends?
It's definitely a performance. I feel like I use a timer. It's like a 10-second timer, and sometimes it's really funny to like imagine myself running and like doing something really quickly and then like just doing it a few times. So I think that's really fun, actually. I think when I do self-portraits, it's a lot of that kind of happened in 2020 when, we were all in lockdown, and it unlocked something pretty, like I feel like it was really nice to be able to think about things that weren't so like, because I think up until that point, I was still kind of looking at photography as portraiture in a lot of ways versus stand still, kind of take the picture. And I think after doing self-portraits, I kind of was more interested in the time in between takes and the times that aren't so calculated, and just kind of became more like the blurriness of things and the more out of focused imagery. I think that's kind of where that all developed. So I like yeah. Do you want to add to that?
No, I would just say that I always think when people ask about self-portraiture, I always think about what Essex Hemphill, said that, it's the idea of using the self as, to take yourself in an experiment in the matter of, let's say, Simon Forster or Cindy Sherman. It's the idea of like one's able to work through, certain things as a way to experiment and to, so.
It's like a self-portrait is a photographer's painting.
Yes. Well, thank you.
That is a perfect note to end on.
That's right.